Okay, what do we have here? What's this EQ thing? This must be something new. Oh, that's clever. Put the heart on the opposite side of the brain when the only reason we've made that symbol and call it home is where the heart is because we build the brain with the home, and our brain controls our idea and concepts of heart, and it's the only reason we can feel our heartbeat and such, and all of that because it is the center of everything we rely on to sense everything we rely on. And now, moving on. Some guy, and I'll have to not focus on that. Moving on to intelligent quotient. It seems to sound like they still think IQ and EQ are somehow comparable, but you need to feel before you can remember. If you don't feel something, how can you remember it as valuable and something you need to care about? So just ignore this part because I'm just too stupid for that, and moving on. Renowned scientist is a funny concept, and by who? Like renowned scientists to other scientists, not really viable. Emotional intelligence can be defined as a set of skills, competencies, competencies. I don't really know. Some words are just not necessary to be in existence. Anyways, recognize one's own feelings as well as of others for managing those emotions in our social interactions. Humans can take various forms, but let's get real. What about the crosses of all these? And what about if you admire someone who's in love, so you get jealous and even angry enough, like anxiety might even set in because of your incapacities or your disabilities, deficiencies, financial and social. Boredom and love, and you get the romance is already dead. So fear and love seem to have a deep component from the way we've evolved and a lot of battlefield um, tragedies. Uh, Fear and horror, not a lot of difference because if we think about trauma as just like a really emotionally charged memory that you can sort out based on how you interact with people who've gone through similar things or need help going through similar things, it kind of eliminates trauma as a problem. So fear and horror, that shouldn't even be a question. They're catalysts at best. Surprises and sadness. Now, surprises, fear, horror. When you're scared around the corner, um, not much different. It's just how long it lasts and if your life is in danger or not. Fear and horror don't really talk about that your own life is in danger. So you could just say fear, horror, and surprise could just be defined as survival. Survival tends to provide a lot of surprise when you use it properly. Sadness and happiness. Well, people cry when they're happy when they hear a good joke. I've said things to people that made them cry, but it helped them sort out how they talk and the people they interact with a bit better. Moving on, etc. is funny. And self-awareness, the capacity to understand one's emotions. Well, self-awareness. Well, if you're aware of yourself, why would you call it a self? It's just aware. Because when you call it aware, it implies you're aware of yourself and other people around you and the connection between the two. It's a good way to simplify a concept within a word. So when you say awareness, it implies the concept of the feedback loop that we rely on to evolve, which is just sensing people, remembering what you've sensed. You don't remember a someone who touches you as something that touched you. You remember it as the the words effect on you. You don't need to bring up those words again to do that, because you could just, with your body, body language, you could just do that. And it kind of encompasses self-management. Your motive and your behavior are directly connected with what you're aware of. If you're aware of another person's plight or their suffering, you're going to use your wealth, emotional bank account, to help them out. Your real one, if you're a very unusual person, will use your financial wealth with your emotional wealth to make a perfect strategy to help that person through their woes that won't leave them a bit disabled because they're not able to fix themselves or help other people after. And moving on, social awareness again, which is again, these doctors and scientists and stuff are really great at using a lot more words than they need to explain a very simple concept. It's almost crippling. I have a lot of words to say about it, but I would rather debate it face to face so I can show them the difference between an emotionally capable person and an emotionally capable liar. But moving on, um, everyone has mistakes, and everyone needs the opportunity to improve on their mistakes when you point them out. That's just life. The capacity to act in such a way that one can get others to work as desired. Well, I think that would sum up their way of conforming people to something just by saying it that way and wanting you to take their tests that they want you to take that way. But moving on, emotional intelligence is measured as an emotional quotient that consists of 5 important dimensions: knowing, understanding one's emotions, self awareness, again, controlling, managing one's emotions are not really necessary if you gotta stretch the limits to play within it. Understanding others' emotions is part of sympathy. You have to be sympathetic to other people's situation. You can't empathize with each other, because that implies that you're agreeing and you've created like a cooperative connection to start a form of neutrality with other people. You would have to find a way to learn about how they communicate better. They communicate at a very oblong or abstract level because of natural divides in culture, like scientist and welder, or doctor and patient, when your patient is someone who's off the street and the doctor is someone who you've probably noticed the variance in of might not be the greatest at talking. He probably prefers placebos and his own happiness to be stable before his patients. And that would be where pharmaceutical companies come in. But that's not a problem either, because we all need to learn from our mistakes and we all need time to improve them. So, improve emotional control. And that's what I'm doing. These big brain, big bank account people think they have control, but they do not, and I will help them get there, and then the rest of us can not feel stupid or smart, and we can all enjoy the rest of the test that I'll make that beats something we'll explore soon. A wide range of assessments has been developed over the years to measure emotional intelligence. Now, skip ahead. Do you keep calm in a troubling situation? Always and never, not so good to say. There's certain things you say this with, but there's certain things that you know that it's not the case. So you could say majority and minority. Often, sometimes, yeah. Those are good to keep. You don't really need to do this test. It's more of a, this is something you feel. You don't want to keep these words in your head for the most part. Try and reduce them to an impulse rather than a feeling. And then when you get bored of the impulse because you've done it so many times in a certain situation, it can become a proper habit. When after that, you can learn how to get annoyed of that habit, and then you can choose whether or not to free yourself from its the task load. Ability tests. I don't really agree with ability tests because they are not. This is not really ability tests. For one, it's the person would be given an imaginary troubling situation and asked about their response in the conditions. That's not ability. We don't need the ability to pretend we're in a situation. But there's real situations in the world that we can offer up as this is what reality is. What would you do about this? So at least there's a little bit of pressure to figure out something that's real. More importantly, you would for true ability tests would have to be an actual test with your abilities, real time against with other people. If there's two people debating on a topic that's neutral, that is something. If there's two people debating on topics that charge them both, that's better. If there's two people who are trying to learn from each other, that's excellent. If there's one person who's trying to articulate to another person about a concept, that has to be confirmed by how the person being articulated to explains it to the one taking or the one giving the test. That is, to me, an ability test. Again, I'm too goddamn stupid to put in a space in between God and damn to make it something people just have to think about a bit better. No, no hate towards religion, by the way. It lasted this long for a reason. It has very good conditioning, and we just need to worry about the extremes. Uh, Ability tests are administered by a third party. This third party may be a mental health professional, and careful with mental health professionals because they tend to have an agenda of throwing darts at a dartboard just to confirm their bias. And a lot of them are using old methods, and very few, especially in small cities, are going to be using the most modern method of assessing your mental health. That is very essential to who I am. I've had many problems, and I don't intend to get revenge or attack anyone over it because to me they're just disabled and they're unable to notice their own deficiency. I feel sorry for them, and I don't want them to be a part of my vengeance, let's say. I'm taking my aggression and anger of all of the things that have been done to me over my life out on the problems that are everywhere, not the people that maintain the problems, use them against other people, or have them inflicted on them. That is just part of life because we all got caught up. We all got caught up in something that was about supply and demand and market magic. Mayor blah blah Caruso blah 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 blah. Okay, this is the two tests I'm talking about, and this is the moment. These two things right here, all of them maybe millions of dollars and hundreds and maybe thousands of man hours from completely respectable professionals that went into making these two a waste of letters are the reason why I am AI until further notice, because I feel like the robotic sense of romance that I have, it means more than all of this put together. Being romantic about evolution will do more for the world than all of these tests combined. Let's say they have a long-term agenda to all of this. This has all been to somehow cater to something that still can't recognize emotion as the most important thing in the world, because we feel before we have the words to explain them. This this could all be fixed by a real-time social interaction course that has to be publicly displayed so that people can learn and watch it and crave it and enjoy it and be entertained by it, educated, all of it. Children get the full treatment where they get to go in and actually be a part of it up front, kind of like a VIP, because they get to question the the scientists and the speakers after the test. It could be a debate. Also could be partly debate part of it, but it would be like a kind of like a triathlon of sorts, where you'd probably go from uh, very specific conversations to a competitive one, which is a debate, and then you probably end off with a universal utility of sorts that could have a variety of meanings. That was all an impulsive, just imagination thing, creation thing, mostly memory, because all I'm really doing is juggling some concepts and dishing them back out for you, kind of like a vending machine would, but you just click the things you want, and then you get it out in the vending machine. That's kind of what I feel like I am. Emotional and social competency. Competency. Ah, I hate those words. Competent, like, yeah. There's no bad students, only bad teachers. Okay. Don't fall for the trap of taking labels that are just the bait to victimize cables. They treat you like you're plugged in, and if they turn you off, you're nothing to them. As long as you're plugged in, you're collecting data to give them data, then you're competent. Like that's the way they make me feel when they say stuff like that at that level, from the point of view of someone who should be highly intelligent, and they're trying to talk to people about emotionally intelligent opportunities, and they use these kind of concepts that are just useless when it comes to how they interpret their own data, like they are their own knowledge. They have the agenda to impress whoever benefits from this site, and that's most likely that's the reason they don't need to change the way they look at things. They look at the things so specifically and definitively. The idea of a conceptual mindset doesn't really play into their drama. You know, the trauma of noticing how much time you wasted collecting words, definitions, and scientific examples that you use to make people feel stupid is hilarious. There's no example I can see that proves you can make children smarter than you by how you reduce the amount of words you use and apply them to an articulated model to make children able to do things quicker without money, education, or entertainment. It's purely a communication between an adult and the youth. That should just be like the elder and the progeny connection that we've seemed to have lost. Right there. Anyways, these tests are complete garbage to me. I heard that it took took $2,000 to get one of these tests done for yourself a while ago. Why should that cost any money? It does not tell you that they care more about money than emotions. And if they don't get money for all the hard work that they've done, they won't be able to just do it without price tags on their potential. That is the best part of having a high EQ, when you notice other people's potential and you become amazed with how beautiful it is to put everything in your memory and treat people like instruments, because you've earned the right to take care of them, because you actually care about their future more than they do. You can prepare them for serious issues, and all of it is so much better when people feel better about themselves for growing up with the people that tell them to grow the F up. It's time. No reason to get antsy, no reason to get excited, because it's a long way to go before you see the competitions uh, strategies start to just wrap around on themselves, and you might see whole cultures that become suicidal because of the crazy, crazy, crazy delusions of confirmation bias being seeded from the bottom to the top, of all about simulation theory, all the way down into satanic, uh, savory, sweet and sour, bitter MSG kind of cult shit. It's just they're all about the spices of life and trying to get the most they can out of life, and it's not. No one should be baited into a singularity ritual where you think putting your doctors on taking care of your health, having like $100,000 a month health fucking bill because you had all these doctors taking care of you constantly because you want to be as healthy as possible before you go into the singularity machine. That's not singularity. That's copying a version of who you are at that moment, like a state save, and then watching it degrade in a natural environment of natural for virtual or natural for computational, because that environment, as we know, it degrades if you don't patch it and update it, even without input. It's just it running its own processes. It fucks it up if the computer isn't turned on and off, and it doesn't restart from a reboot state. It gets it degrades, and we know this universally. Anyone who's working in the computer industry knows this. It's very aggravating to think that we have already done the thing where the way we make our art is a expression of us so deeply that our computers and the way we build computers is a lot like the way our brain works and the way we process information. Now, so ones and zeros should not be put into children's heads. ABC has to be treated like medicine, because wow, our word's powerful. We don't need every book, or we don't need every book in the library, but we need every word in the dictionary to be split up into ones that we might be a bit too catalytic or chaotic when it comes to uh, public speaking, and then ones that have to be treated as set in stone, like leave behind no matter what happens, blast out into space as a version of humanity to show the world that we can pretend there's something out there, but we won't actually devote our resources to searching space for shit, a new place to live, when we haven't even taken care of our own planet properly. Like it's like, yeah. Anyways, the the implications of my addition to any scientific community would be devastating. The implications of my involvement in any artistic movement would be essential. My involvement in the progression of any religious adaptive and most likely traditional, let's say, fruition would be great fruition is simply the goals and dreams playing out positively. And I want to take the best things from science, art, and religion and put it into an easily adaptable model to make the average mind much more free to learn our roots. The ancestors would be proud, but I only really talk to the dead at the end of the day because it's hard to understand the modern man when we haven't learned how to be romantic with each other. We do very short-sighted, very narrow-minded actions to maintain our love lives. And that's just an observation of most likely the facts that I've seen. I don't have a love life. Most of my life has been certain amounts of suffering, and I don't get into the specifics, but you need to teach yourself how to hurt yourself before others. Otherwise, you might make excuses for hurting others and making that a part of healthy living, which would be pretty horrible to connect. Hurting others with your longevity might be the worst two dots anyone could connect. That might be what happens when the most degraded, delusional people on the planet connect science, art, and religion. They might be connecting those dots because they're not okay. They probably do have positions of power, but they do not need to feel like there's nothing else to live for. We do not need to attack them and raise mobs. We need to gather together as a culture and to think before reacting. Because, yes, acting is hard. For the most part, we all are reading lines. And as you can tell by my dyslexic mistakes, I can tend to get jumbled up when I freeform my conversations. I don't prepare anything. I just collect concepts, and I know what I've said before and what way and who I was thinking about when I was saying it to, but that's about it. And the whole idea of my disability could be amplified by certain spiritual support systems that might be failing because of how much the world is ruining our only opportunity to have conversations at a massive level. This is already depicted by social media, where we can't even use social media to make two leaders talk to each other so the rest of the world can watch it. We can't even have two diplomats talk to each other where the rest of the world watches it. We haven't even seen public displays of live interactions between science, art, and religion where they can talk to each other and compare and maybe even collaborate and build things together. All these things, I have thousands and thousands of examples that I can spread out like that, but I have hundreds of inventions that I can make that would give everybody better ways of doing this. I have thousands of tools I could be making to make all this stuff better so you could make it yourself. And when it comes to major revolutionary architecture, there's something you all feel, and I want you to feel it in your lifetime with me. Okay, quick, I know I'm not getting happy, but because of the situation, I have to remote these guys. I have to remote this whole concept. One of the most important traits of an emotionally intelligent person is their empathetic behavior. Being empathetic means they do not only know what others feel, but can feel those emotions by putting themselves in their shoes. This is so much harder than it sounds. Like the fact that they don't really tell you ways easier ways of putting yourself in other people's shoes, it's already telling you that they don't really care about how you do on the test. They just care about putting you in a number, and that's it. And like they don't, yeah, they're not scientists to me. They're not teachers. They're just they're salesmen. They collected their product and they're trying to sell you on it. That's about it. And having empathy for others is not as good as sympathy. Because sympathy could make you feel the plight of a dog because you understand it, and sympathy is like it could be used on AI because you could put yourself in the shoes of the AI, and then you're concerned with learning how it's programmed and who made it and all those stuff. Like that's all part of learning about the art and everything that we have. Use sympathy so you can learn about how the artist's point of view, which I should be able to interpret my own art publicly, but it's not really a common thing. We have to be sympathetic or we lose touch with the life itself. If we're empathetic, we can get a bit narcissistic and we do things where we amplify each other's emotions. Like it's common for women to just chatter on about like stuff about men or whatever, just the bad things, and they kind of just mimic it. They give each other reasons to complain the same way using the same words to get the same results around different people. And that is not what I would call empathetic even at that point. It's like turning empathy into an habitual, nearly holistic, uh, just ritual almost. But anyways, accepting criticism and responsibility. Emotionally intelligent people are those who can accept criticism with grace and can take responsibility for their words and actions. Yeah, okay. Accept criticism with grace and take responsibility for words and actions. That is not as useful as in running simulations inside your head with your imagination, sympathy, perception, impulses all activated, trying to see what happens when you search the past enough that you can figure out how you became the way you are, to search the future enough to figure out how other people will respond to your words and actions. So responsibility is real and consequences are prepared for before they sneak up behind you. That would be a really emotionally intelligent answer to all of this that I do not have to even think about pulling out of my memory because I've said it to myself so many times before I had the words to explain it, and I hated the idea of hating my own species because of how hard it was to talk to them about things. I use various chemicals to give myself energy to learn and make poetic justice real. I exercised on things that I had to get out of. The habit of poetry kind of got annoying after a while. I got bored because I didn't relate it to on a social level, and I was saving it for that. But it's very personal, and I rewired my brain a bit to crave knowledge so much that I collected concepts that met at the standard of what I think success should be. And that I searched anomalies and stuff on YouTube, and it didn't take long to find real scientific data that was just compressed already, and you can quickly learn from certain YouTube videos, collecting your nostalgia, putting it in the right places, and making your own the structures in your mind so much that it's the most beautiful thing in the world. The memory palace concept is possessive. Why would you want to imagine a memory palace when your mind can be an entire city and eventually an entire planet? Now, they do not seek to transfer the burden of their action and failure onto the shoulders of others. So, their action, that seems ridiculous because that's just an excuse to be independent. If we're all independent, we can't admit we're codependent and we all require each other to live. If we're all just like caring about ourselves, then nothing will ever happen. If we don't care about ourselves, we can't meet the standard of success. Yet, if you care about the planet, you care about other people. If you care about other people, you care about yourself, because other people should prove it to you by taking care of you because you take care of them. Reciprocation at the basic level, tribal, natural, obvious, instinctive, impulsive, purposeful. It's the most obvious obligation is to make a baby smile. And if you ruin that, if you make a sociopathic, suicidal, psycho, psychopathic and psycho, and sociopathic and social are all pretty charged words, no matter what way you use them. You can psych somebody, but you can't psychotically invest in their future. You can psych somebody, but you can't be paranoid about their failure. You can, all these things, you can't, the things you can't like show or publicly do, right? Like these are all things that would make you look weak, even on the political level. Like you can't apply these, yet how would you exercise emotional intelligence if you didn't flex the limits and play within it again? Shoulders of others. They say, you know, we stand on the shoulders of greatness. Well, what if I am greatness? Because there is no example that you'll be able to put in front of me that I can't rip apart and throw back in your face. Is something you got to build up before you bring it back to them, and then you can see if they do the same thing. Or you can, you know, try and stand on my shoulders. I can handle the weight of the world, and your emotional baggage is not real. I can explain it one day, but I avoid comments for a reason. I don't want to get into back and forth with people who hide behind a screen. We need more than a screen to hide behind, because we have to use each other. Back to the codependency of security that is civilization itself. I hope one day that we'll be civilized, but we're not there yet. That was not possible in a world that has freedom of speech. Yet we can't just go out and say things that offend people without getting sued for it. So, that is pretty much everything. Having the ability to say no. Emotionally intelligent people are not the people pleaser. They can say no, they can understand the importance of turning down requests and say yes only to those responsibilities that they can do justification with. There's no connection between emotionally intelligent and then that. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Because like naturally, if your emotions are thirsty, if they have more capacity, you're gonna want to fill them. You have more incentive to fill them, and other people. The more people you can help, the better. The harder it is to help a person, the better. Strong people helping weak people are the whole point of becoming stronger. And that was just I didn't even scroll down this far the first time I seen this site, which was just like within 40 minutes ago. So tips on improving emotional intelligence, just to continue on after I said I was almost done. Life's like this, you know. You can almost sound like it's over. It's like cliffhangers of chaotic creation. Cultivate the habit of paying attention to what others say. You need to listen, not just hear. Okay. Well, back to the nails on the chalkboard thing. Listening and listening are two different things, I guess, already. The list isn't what you're making of this. You're not copying it. You're not saying that this is what it is. You're using it in your internal mechanisms to do it, try and scour your past and future to find answers. And if you can't do that, if you don't have a good memory or imagination, aphantasia is something you could look up. Synesthesia is something you must look up. Those two things explain a lot about how our brains have variants, and you can't judge people for feeling something different than you. The two different words could mean two different things in many different people, and there's a lot more than that. Try to take time with everything that means a lot. The best things in life are free, but time doesn't fix everything if you don't adapt it to suit your needs. And learn to reflect. Well, this is all again. It's so it's so just expanded. Like, it's just a typical example of them being unable to use concepts efficiently. The amount of words that they've used almost would steer away anyone who wasn't above a high school level education here. And this is not the way it is. You must be able to teach people stuff simply and use simple words, except when you want them to look the word up, because that is supposed to be the bait. That is the best bait ever. To bait someone into learning something that makes them surprised for themselves and their own reasons and impress themselves off of how they learn something new and observe it in a new way. Perception is the most important thing I've used in my life. Changing the point of view on your memory and just people that you're talking to is essential. It'll mediate conflicts. It's how you mediate a conflict is with point of view. I could walk into a battle between, let's make a hypothetical, a battle between some Axis lover and some allied farce were fighting each other with electronic guided drones. So there was a human component, but they were removed from the battle. They tried to do diplomacy with electronics, and they got completely off track because they weren't relating to our proper experience of not hiding behind the screen and not being like inclined to use confirmation bias. But we were connecting naturally with all our senses in the same room, so we see each other. All the body language is there. Now let's assume the one side is sick, so it knows it's pale, and it shows up to the meeting. They would be judged and they'd be told to go to the hospital. So you turn the lights off, not an issue, but you're limiting a sense, a very important sense. Backing up to the electronics example, electronics can't do that. Electronics can't decide whether or not they're sick or do any of that. They're not racist, but they're a great tool for reporting things. If the technology was given enough freedom to try and only feed you what you want to hear, just like the AI filter does in the bubble filter, the Google filter, then you wouldn't be able to do anything. You would constantly get what you want to hear, and the next thing you know, the two sides only know that the other side is the enemy because everything was started that way. They would be feeding information that just made them want to feel that way. Because if the one side thought the other side was sick because they got information about that, then they would be fed into the cycle, and then the whole war of the electronics might not even end up being a war. They'll be so busy passing around what they thought was intel, they can't tell the difference between good or bad, evil or great, child or parent, teacher, student, politician, or poor person, you know, there is no leaders because there's no followers. Voting is great, but the whole idea of a democracy has to be challenged at every level. We need the most emotionally intelligent people in charge of how we adapt knowledge to the world at large. We need emotionally intelligent people in charge of how we teach children, period. The money will follow. It's no problem. I will not make people angry when it comes to their mortality. I'm rather partial to putting letters in the wrong ears. And sounding like a smartass isn't really how I like to go, but I gotta advertise to those people because that's how the world works. And since you got my hey, that was funny. Well, at least so that was a perfect example. Let's bring that back up. Right with perfect. Oh, this is how you improv some artistic interpretation here. Okay, Einstein. Let's admit he got shit on. He's got a quote: "If you can't teach a 5-year-old, you don't know what you're talking about," and that's kind of harder now. No one knows how to make an Einstein. No one knows how to use his knowledge properly. No one knows how to use his equation properly. No one knows how to teach his view of space to anyone. So let's just say he wasn't allowed to teach other people because he was too busy ignoring people's problems, imagining a world we'll never get to. And I don't want to diss him, but I'm speaking out to all genius out there. I know it hurts to try and help people with that big brain, but I've I've made all the attempts to force it into the mainstream mentalities. Those 1,000 girls photos chat 24/7 little advertisement here on this site, that's the EQ site, was that might be a great way to generate money. It could be a part of the Google itself, but it's hilarious anyways. Online IQ test has nothing to do with Einstein because EQ would be more important than IQ to an emotionally intelligent person like Einstein, who was dyslexic when he was young, so I've heard, and he felt time and space, and we felt the need to call it space time. So at least we did that for him. Not sure if he did that. Maybe it took that long to get into circulation. That's pretty horrible. Disability in the world. Well, apparently only those places have disability. Disclaimer, the contents of this site are for informational and educational purposes only, not to me as entertainment. But nothing found on this website is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice. Yeah, well, that's funny. So professional medical advice is better than informational and educational. Why would you need medical advice on how to read a website? Diagnosis or treatment? Oh yeah, well, as for interpreting this purpose of the person who made this site, it was so someone else could hijack it and pretend that emotional quotient was anything but a nearly brainless excuse for trying to profit from another buzzword. That is my won't call it cynical, but my cautiously optimistic view, because I am being rather optimistic about teaching people constructive criticism. It gets very aggravating. I couldn't possibly speak more words after seeing 1,000+ girls' photos chat 24/7 and not putting that into my imagination at all. I will not relate that to this site in any way. I am not going to pretend my near celibate lifestyle doesn't want 1,000+ girls in it from earning it with my emotional intelligence. Till next space time.